Prologue. They say you cannot escape your karma. If something is meant to happen, it will find you no matter how far you run from it. The same is true for Aarya, the loneliest princess in a palace filled with her own blood, a daughter with no voice in her own fate, a girl promised away, married off by her father to protect a kingdom that has never protected her. To a prince who sees the world only in black and white, a prince whose ambition to conquer knows no bounds, a prince who would see her as nothing more than a pawn in his game. So, she runs, but fate is not so easily outplayed, because the road she chooses leads her straight back to the very man she was trying to escape. It takes him no time to uncover her truth. He knows exactly who she is, but he says nothing. He does not let her go. Instead, he keeps her close, not as a princess, but as a maid, a secret he guards, a game he controls. He breaks her pride, tests her patience, pushes her to the edge, waiting for her to confess, to surrender, to beg, but time does what neither of them expects. He begins to protect her, then to rely on her, then to want her more than he ever intended, more than he is willing to admit, and she begins to fall for the very man she once feared, the predator who watches everything, who misses nothing, a man of ruthless precision, relentless ambition, a man who protects what is his with a ferocity that should terrify her and yet draws her in, the man she still plans to escape. This is not a love story that begins with tenderness. It is a story that tears them apart piece by piece before it brings them back together. And what rises from the ruins is not just love, but a bond strong enough to survive anything. Chapter 1. The full moon shone over the palace of Sagarkidu, but Princess Aarya found no comfort in its glow. By this time next month, she would be married to the crown prince of Matsya. It was not a marriage of love. It was a political bargain proposed by her own father. The crown prince was a man feared across the northern lands. In the past year alone, he had crushed 4 kingdoms, yet conquest had only sharpened his hunger. His ambitions stretched from Matsya's borders to the very ocean itself. And Sagarkidu stood in his path. King Sudhanshu knew the truth. His army could never withstand the prince's bloodthirsty legions. He refused to surrender his kingdom, yet he had no power to defeat the invader either. Marriage, therefore, was his only shield. If the prince became family, Sagarkidu would become an ally instead of the next battlefield. Aarya was furious when she learned of her father's decision. She could not believe that the man who had once carried her on his shoulders was now willing to trade her freedom for the kingdom's safety. Yet no one had asked for her consent. The crown prince had accepted the proposal, but with a condition: surrender the ports and let Matsya control the trade. King Sudhanshu had no choice but to agree. Chapter 2. The palace buzzed with preparations for Princess Aarya's wedding. Maids braided her long curls with delicate flowers, while her mother draped her in rare silks and heavy ornaments. Outside, guards hung garlands along the palace walls. To everyone else, it was a celebration. To Aarya, it felt like preparation for a sacrifice. She felt like a goat being adorned before it was offered to the gods. She had only one option left: escape. It would not be easy, but it was possible. Aarya had grown up in this palace. She knew every corridor, every hidden stairway, every checkpoint where the guards stood. Most importantly, she knew the exact moment their shifts changed. That night she packed a few essentials and changed into peasant clothes. Then she waited. Hours crawled by before the first shift ended. When the guards began switching positions, Aarya slipped out of her chamber. She had less than a minute. Her heart pounded as she ran through the back gardens and dropped behind a cluster of thick bushes. From there, she found the narrow stone entrance hidden beneath the vines. The secret tunnel. Her father had once shown it to her brother as an emergency escape route for the royal family. Aarya had followed them that day, jealous that her brother received all their father's attention. She never imagined she would use it herself. The tunnel was long and suffocatingly dark. Damp earth clung to the walls as she pushed forward through the narrow passage. She did not stop. She could not. When she finally emerged from the other side, she collapsed onto the forest floor covered in soil, dirt, and freedom. Chapter 3. Aarya slowly stood up. For the first time in her life, she was truly alone. For weeks she had done nothing but plan every step, every turn, every possibility. Escaping the palace and the forced marriage had seemed almost impossible, which was why she had prepared for it so carefully. And now it had worked. The realization unsettled her. She had planned the escape, but never what would come after. What will happen when the news spreads? She wondered. The crown prince would almost certainly attack Sagarkidu. Her kingdom would become the battlefield he had long desired. Would he at least spare my parents? A heavy weight settled in her chest. For a moment, the air refused to fill her lungs. Another fear followed close behind. How would she survive out here? Aarya had grown up behind the safe walls of the palace. Servants had cooked her meals, guards had protected her gates, and tutors had filled her days with lessons. She had never faced the dangers of the real world, let alone the dark wilderness stretching before her. The truth struck her all at once. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks. For a brief moment, the thought crossed her mind. Perhaps I should return, but the thought vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Going back would mean surrender. She would rather die fighting for her own existence than submit herself to a husband whose only language was domination. Aarya clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white. The forest stretched endlessly before her. She took a step forward, then another. Chapter 4. It must have been nearly 2 hours since Aarya left the tunnel. Her legs trembled with every step, yet she forced herself to keep moving. The small water pouch she had carried from the palace had emptied long ago. Traveling light had helped her escape, but now it had become her greatest mistake. Her throat burned with thirst. At last, she stopped and leaned against the trunk of an old tree. Sitting down was not an option. She knew that if she allowed herself to collapse, she might never find the strength to stand again. Her eyes drifted shut from exhaustion. If only I could find some water. She had never imagined that drinkable water could one day feel like a luxury. This is all because of that cursed crown prince, she thought bitterly. If not for his greed, I would be asleep in my chamber wrapped in silk, with servants fanning the summer heat away. I hate you even more, she whispered. She tilted her head back toward the sky, hoping to gather the strength to pray to the goddess. But instead, her gaze fell upon the tree behind her. A kadamba tree. Her eyes widened with sudden hope. The lush green leaves and thick trunk were unmistakable. Kadamba trees almost always grew near water sources. Energy surged through her tired body. Aarya began searching around the tree, widening her circle step by step. Moments later, she heard it. The faint sound of flowing water. She hurried toward it and soon found what she was searching for. A narrow stream winding through the forest. Aarya rushed forward and dropped to her knees. She dipped her hands into the cool stream and splashed water onto her face. The cold droplets ran down her skin, washing away sweat and dust. For a brief moment, peace returned. The breeze felt cooler now. She was about to stand up when something moved on the opposite side of the stream. Aarya froze. 2 glowing yellow eyes stared at her from behind the bushes. They were watching her. Slowly, the bushes shifted. A massive paw stepped into the open. Thick fur, curved claws glinting faintly in the moonlight. A tiger. Aarya's heart sank. The enormous animal moved closer to the stream, its muscles rippling beneath its striped coat. It lowered its head and began drinking, its rough pink tongue lapping at the water. Its long canines flashed each time its jaws opened. If it attacks me, I will not last a second. Carefully, slowly, Aarya began stepping backward. She did not dare turn around. Maybe it hasn't seen me. Maybe it only came here to drink. Animals were not like humans. They did not kill without reason. Right. Her back suddenly struck a tree trunk. The bark scraped against her shoulder. The sound was small, but in the stillness of the forest it echoed like thunder. The tiger stopped drinking. Its head lifted. Those piercing yellow eyes locked onto her. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then the tiger lunged. Aarya turned and ran. Branches whipped against her arms as she sprinted through the trees. Behind her, the thunder of heavy paws crashed through the forest. The tiger roared. It was getting closer. Aarya could see flashes of orange and black in the corner of her vision. Closer. Closer. This is it, she thought. Her foot caught on a root and she fell hard onto the ground. She lay face down, too terrified to move. Hot breath washed over the back of her neck. The tiger was right behind her. Her entire life flashed before her eyes. Aarya closed her eyes and clenched her fists, bracing herself for what would come next. Chapter 5. A sharp whoosh sliced through the air. Then came a heavy thud. The tiger collapsed beside Aarya. For a moment, she could not move. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her throat. The enormous beast lay on its side, its golden eyes slowly losing their fierce glow. It struggled weakly, as if trying to rise, but its body refused to obey. Within seconds, its eyelids drooped shut. Aarya stared in disbelief. The tiger's massive chest still rose and fell. It was breathing slowly, steadily. Then she saw it. An arrow was lodged deep in its back. Her mind struggled to process what had just happened. She tried to stand, but her legs failed her immediately. Exhaustion from the long escape, the terror of the attack, and the crushing uncertainty of her situation all crashed down on her at once. Slowly, she lifted her head toward the direction the arrow had come from. A figure was approaching through the trees. A man. He carried a bow in one hand and a quiver of arrows across his back. As he stepped into the moonlight, his face became clearer. Dark wavy hair fell almost to his shoulders, and his broad frame moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged in the forest. Aarya stared at him for a moment longer than she meant to. His lips were moving. He was asking her something, but the words did not reach her. Everything still felt distant, unreal. Before she could respond, he extended his hand toward her. Only then did she notice the rough bruise across his palm. A hunter, she thought faintly. Without waiting for an answer, he grasped her arm firmly and helped her to her feet, guiding her away from the unconscious tiger. Aarya followed without resistance. She did not know who he was. She did not know where he had come from. All she knew was that he had saved her life. Her gaze dropped to their joined hands. Her own palm seemed to disappear inside his large, calloused one. For the first time since leaving the palace, Aarya felt safe. Chapter 6. When Aarya opened her eyes, she found herself lying on a bed of soft grass. The air was crisp and cool. Dawn was breaking behind the distant hills, spreading pale golden light across the meadow. She slowly sat up. The dense forest was gone. In its place stretched an open meadow dotted with smaller trees. Nearby, a small fire had burned down to glowing embers. "Looks like you're finally awake." Aarya turned toward the voice. Her savior stood a few steps away. He was tall, nearly 6 feet, with broad shoulders and calm brown eyes. His simple clothes clung to a strong, athletic frame that suggested years of hunting and hard travel. "How did I? When did I? What happened?" she asked, her voice confused but calmer than before. "You collapsed," he said casually. "I carried you here." "Oh." Aarya lowered her gaze to the ground. Then she looked up again. "The tiger. Will it be okay?" The man raised an eyebrow. "Seriously, that beast tried to kill you. If it weren't for me, you'd be dead by now. And the first thing you ask about is the tiger." He smirked. "I didn't mean." "I'm sorry, I just thought." "I don't know what I thought." She covered her face in embarrassment. "Well, for starters," he said, folding his arms, "you could say thank you, and maybe explain what you were doing alone in the dark forest at midnight." "Oh, right, of course." Aarya quickly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm really grateful for what you did last night. You're right, I would have died, but you saved me. I wish I could repay you somehow, but nothing I say or do will be enough." "So you're not even going to try?" he asked. What? I risked my life for you, you know, he said calmly. That tiger could have attacked me too. Fortunately, my special mixture on the arrowhead knocked it unconscious. He paused. And all I get is a polite thank you. His face was completely serious. Aarya could not tell if he was joking. Back in the palace, her father would have rewarded him with land, gold, perhaps even a title. But that life was gone. Now she was just a girl trying to survive. At least tell me your name, he said more gently. My name is my name is Priya. The lie slipped out awkwardly. She could not risk revealing who she really was. If he knew she was the princess, he might drag her back to the palace for reward. Money could change anyone. So, Priya, he said slowly, do you always hesitate this much, or is today a special occasion? His teasing pulled her back to the present. What were you doing in the forest? He asked sharply. I had my reasons, she replied defensively. I'm grateful that you saved me, but that doesn't give you the right to interrogate me. She crossed her arms. And what about you? She shot back. You've asked me 100 questions, but I know nothing about you. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why were you in the forest? Why did you save me? He raised both hands. Whoa, easy there, Tiger. I'm not ready for another attack. A grin spread across his face. He sat down across from her. All right, since you're so curious. My name is Arnav. I was on a hunting trip with my group when I got separated from them. While looking for my way back, I heard the tiger's roar. He glanced at her. I followed the sound and saw a girl running for her life. The tiger was practically playing with her. The more exhausted she became, the easier she would be to kill. He shrugged. She clearly lacked the speed and tactics needed to survive. Aarya frowned. So, out of the kindness of my heart, he continued casually. I saved her, only to discover that she also lacks the patience to have a simple conversation. He looked at her. Anything else you'd like to know? Then he turned toward his horse grazing nearby. Aarya sat in silence. He had completely dismantled her argument and she had no words left. Slowly she reached into her small bag. Inside were her few remaining possessions, some food, a water pouch, and the plain clothes she had borrowed from her maid Priya. The name she had just stolen. Embarrassment burned inside her. There was nothing in her bag that she could offer in gratitude to this man. Then her fingers brushed against something cold. The emerald ring, a deep green stone framed by tiny pearls. The crown prince had given it to her father as a gift for her after their engagement. It was the last piece of that life she still carried. She had forgotten to remove it before escaping. Slowly she slid the ring from her finger. For a brief moment, a strange ache passed through her chest. Then she stood and walked toward Arnav. Here, she said calmly, extending her hand. Take it! He turned toward her. The moment he saw the ring, his expression changed. His eyes widened slightly. All the color seemed to drain from his face. He took the ring carefully. In his large, calloused hands, the delicate jewelry looked strangely out of place. He examined it closely. Then he looked at her. Something in his gaze had shifted like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Before Aarya could understand what he was thinking, a distant noise reached her ears. A rumble. She turned toward the hills. A large troop of soldiers was approaching on horseback, closing the distance rapidly. Arnav did not react. He was still staring at the ring. Aarya's heart began to race. Father's search party, she thought. Without hesitation, she dropped to her knees in front of him. Please, she begged. Please help me. I gave you the most valuable thing I had. She pointed toward the approaching soldiers, now less than a mile away. Please save me just one more time. Arnav finally looked up, first at her, then at the soldiers. After a moment, he nodded. Chapter 7. Arnav turned toward the approaching troops. Instinctively, Aarya stepped behind him, almost hiding in his shadow. As the soldiers drew closer, she noticed something strange. The flags, the uniforms, the armor. None of it belonged to Sagarkidu. Aarya's heart began to pound. If these are not my father's soldiers, then whose are they? Who would dare cross Sagarkitu's borders so openly? Something shifted uneasily inside her chest. The troop finally halted a short distance away. One man dismounted from his horse. He wore khaki trousers and a neatly stitched white linen shirt. His posture was straight and commanding the bearing of someone born into nobility. He raised his left hand in a brief gesture. Instantly, the entire troop bowed in perfect synchronization. Then the man himself stepped forward and bowed deeply before Arnav. "Your Highness," he said. His voice carried careful restraint. Aarya's heart sank. Her hands began to tremble. Her worst fear was slowly unfolding before her eyes. Arnav, however, remained perfectly calm like a still pond untouched by wind. "Your Highness," the man continued, "we were worried about you." Arnav raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He asked casually. "You don't think I can survive one night in the forest?" "That's not what I meant, Your Highness," the man replied quickly. "You are to be married in a week, His Majesty. Your father gave strict orders that you must be watched at all times. We cannot take any risks." Arnav sighed slightly. "Relax, Kabir. You are my friend before you are my father's commander. I told you to be less formal around me." Kabir shook his head respectfully. "I'm afraid that is not possible, sir. I am on official duty." The man appeared to be around Arnav's age, yet the weight of responsibility made him seem older. Wiser. "You disappeared without warning," Kabir continued. "My men returned empty-handed." Arnav walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I told you to leave me alone," he said lightly, "and I knew your men were following me." He smirked. "By the way, it wasn't very difficult to distract them, something you may want to improve." Kabir's expression tightened slightly, then his gaze shifted. He noticed the girl standing behind Arnav. Thin, silent, arms crossed tightly. Her eyes met his for barely a second, but something about them was unsettling. Cold, sharp. Kabir rarely felt intimidated, yet for a moment he did. "Who is she?" he asked, pointing towards Aarya. Arnav glanced back. "Oh, she's with me." Kabir blinked. "With you?" "How?" "Why?" Arnav chuckled softly. "I'm still trying to figure that out myself." His eyes drifted briefly to the ring in his hand. "Let's get out of here," he said. He began walking toward the waiting chariot. Kabir followed. Aarya did not move. Her mind had frozen. Questions flooded her thoughts all at once. Who is he really? Why did that man call him Your Highness? If he is royalty, why is he dressed like a common hunter? Then the truth crashed into her like a storm. Is he the crown prince? Her breath caught in her throat. Why is the goddess punishing me like this? The man who saved my life is the very man I ran away from. No, this cannot be true. I refuse to accept it. Arnav noticed she had not followed. He turned back and called out. "Come on, Priya," he said casually. "You can get lost in your thoughts on the ride." Two soldiers approached and escorted her toward the chariot. Arnav stood beside it. Waiting, he offered her his hand. "Oh," he added suddenly, as if remembering something trivial. "I forgot to introduce myself properly." He smiled. "I'm Arnav, the crown prince of Matsya." He gestured toward the other man. "And this is my childhood friend, an army commander, Kabir." Aarya felt tears rising in her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. Chapter 8. The chariot ride tested Aarya's patience. Every second felt like an hour. Arnav sat across from her in complete silence. He did not ask a single question. Yet his quiet presence filled the entire space, making Aarya increasingly nervous. Had he recognized her? Why wasn't he saying anything? The chariot finally came to a halt after nearly 2 hours. Before them stood a magnificent silver-blue castle nestled among tall eucalyptus trees that overlooked the valley below. On the far side of that valley lay Sagarkitu, peaceful, unaware. Aarya wondered how long that peace would last. The moment Arnav stepped out of the chariot, the palace staff sprang into motion. Guards straightened their posture, and maids hurried through the corridors. As he walked through the beautifully carved mahogany doors, he seemed to command the entire hall without saying a word. Everyone watched him. Every bow he received was acknowledged with a brief nod before he disappeared into his private chambers. The staff looked almost mesmerized by his presence. Kabir remained behind and gestured for Aarya to follow. As she entered the castle, she paused for a moment. It was breathtaking. Unlike the palace in Sagarkidu, which had been built to display power and royal authority, this castle felt like a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Every wall, every carving, every archway was delicately detailed. It felt less like a fortress and more like a work of art, but the beauty did little to comfort her. As Aarya walked through the main hall, she could feel dozens of eyes studying her. Who is she? Where did she come from? The whispers began almost immediately. She had not eaten in nearly 20 hours. Her borrowed clothes were dusty from the forest, and her face looked pale and exhausted. She stood out like a stain on silk. Kabir escorted her to a guest chamber. "Wait here," he said before stepping outside. The door closed behind him. Moments later, she heard his voice through the wood as he instructed 2 guards to stand watch. Aarya's chest tightened. She was not officially imprisoned, but she certainly felt like a prisoner. Soon 2 maids entered the room. Without asking many questions, they helped her prepare a bath. Warm water filled the copper tub. After she finished bathing, they offered her a luxurious silk robe. Aarya shook her head. Instead, she chose a simple gagra and blouse, draping a long dupatta over her shoulders. The maids brought food soon after, but Aarya could barely swallow a single bite. Her body refused it. Eventually, the maids left. The room fell silent. Aarya climbed onto the bed and curled into herself. It was eerily similar to the bed she had slept in back at the palace. Every small sound from the hallway made her heart race. At any moment, Arnav could summon her. He could question her, and once the truth came out, nothing could stop him. He could destroy Sagarkidu. He could kill her parents. He could punish her for humiliating him before 2 kingdoms. All because she had made one reckless decision. Aarya covered her mouth to muffle the sound, and finally she cried. Outside, the evening shadows slowly swallowed the light.